Hello and welcome to Sword and Board presents Board, James Board. I'm Luke.
I'm Lars.
And I'm Dad.
It has been a little while since we have been doing this. A lot of crazy things have happened in the James Bond related universe. How is everyone doing?
I'm doing okay. For those, just to kind of give a frame of reference to everybody, we're recording this on November 4th, 2020, which historians, you're either going to see this as the day that the tide turned or the day that it just continued into madness. So, don't know. I'm hopeful that there is still a world out there to listen to this later. Things are going pretty well. We actually were just talking, my family and I, we just booked a trip to go see Lucas out in the lovely state of Colorado, starting in the spring. So we're hopeful that that will work out. And this is kind of a bittersweet one today, gang, because this is our first one that we'll talk about after the passing of Sir Sean Connery. Was he Sir? He was knighted, right?
He was.
Knighted in our hearts, at least.
Yes. Sir Sean Connery.
No, but he was knighted.
90 years old, right?
Hadn't done a whole lot in a while, and the stuff that he had done in the past 20 years or so had definitely gone... It's interesting, his brogue had gotten more broguish. There was a video game version of the film we're actually about to talk about today, From Russia with Love, made in like 2004, I think, somewhere around there.
As a PlayStation 2 game.
Yeah, and he voices James Bond in it, but he voices because it's 60 years after the movie came out or however long. He sounds so much older and so much more Scottish.
Yeah.
And it's really like, this doesn't sound like the James Bond I know. This sounds like an old Scottish dude, which, fair.
Right.
Yeah, his last movie was The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. That was his last movie, and I think he retired he was 73.
And then he did a single animated film. He did a single Scottish animated film, which was terrible. And then I think he did some documentary work. But his actual last movie was League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which was profoundly okay.
And that's selling it. That's high.
It was incredibly
that's high praise. But yeah, I mean, talk about a life where you create an iconic character like James. I mean, obviously Ian Fleming created him, but our perception of James Bond and cool and like all debonair, he created that.
Exactly.
And then you go on to you have your Ramirez. And you're in A Murder on the Orient Express, and you're Zardoz,
and the man who will be king,
and Robin and Marion,
and Draco from Dragonheart,
and Draco from Dragonheart, and you and obviously Malone from Untouchables, and he nabs an Oscar for that. Just checkered and had blemishes, but was just, what 90-year-old life doesn't have that. And I feel like, this one, there's been other, 2020 has been rife for people that have passed. And every year is, obviously, but I think that everyone's on a heightened sense of, doom and gloom already. So anybody that passes away, it stings more. This one didn't as much just because, man, you lived a life. It wasn't cut short or anything. This was you did it.
and he died in his sleep. Where he lived in the Bahamas.
You know what, you can't really ask for much more than that.
Right.
And with his wife, right? He was with his family, and
he was with his wife and family, and I read a really interesting article about him that no matter what part he played, he always used his Scottish brogue. He just spoke the way he spoke. Even when he Russian. Was he was a Russian in
Hunt for October.
Hunt for October. He still had a Scottish brogue, even though he was a Russian. Yeah. It was crazy because who cares?
Well, in that they do a really good moment with that in that movie where he does speak with a Russian. He speaks Russian, and they zoom in and they zoom out, and everyone's speaking English. It's a nice translation scene. However, when he's speaking English to people who don't speak Russian, he's still speaking Scottish.
Right. We're talking about a great movie tonight, and in honor of I'm trying to do a different martini-inspired drink. This one was simple because I feel like this is a simple movie. It's straight and to the point. It's cold. It's calculating. He's not all flash or anything. It's to the point. He's a killer, and so it's just straight up Russian vodka. It's Russian Standard vodka. That's the brand. Over ice, so it's chilled, and that's what I'm drinking tonight in honor of From Russia with Love.
I am drinking a cup of fresh brewed coffee without any kind of filter, so I'm having bits of coffee grounds floating around. Actually, it's not bad. Yep.
Perfect.
I had a thought about this earlier. So From Russia with Love, we're still not at a Bond movie 100%. This is definitely a spy movie. Well, just hold on. We're not... Dr. No wasn't quite a Bond movie. It wasn't even really a spy movie. It was a detective story. We have a spy movie with this. And while this may not be a James Bond movie, we're starting to see what James Bond looks like. There's a suit being tailored, and it's being tailored for Sean Connery.
I would sort of agree with you, but I really think this one is where he comes into himself. He is James Bond, and we realize and understand who he is. I know, and I agree with you in Dr. No. It was a mystery movie kind of. It was a detective story, and this one was more, he was sent to do a job by British intelligence, so you understood he was a spy. I don't know. I really think
I agree with you, Dad, and actually I think that this is the point where you could have branched into different directions. The other movies heightened the gadgets, they heightened the girls, they heightened the locales, they heightened all of this. You could have had a parallel timeline of James Bond movies that are a little less reliant on gadgetry and more reliant on the train fight.
Sure.
It could have gone that route. That's why I say this is a cold, calculating movie. It's not polished. Yep. There's some elements that are like, it's pretty rough and tumble and mean, and you could have gone that route. Before we dive into the plot, I was most surprised. This is a sequel. This is a sequel to Dr. No, and the other James Bond. And when we watched James Bond growing up, it was on TBS. They'd have the James Bond marathons and all that kind of stuff, and they show them out of order, so you don't really get the flow through. But I never really got a sense that there was direct sequels in a lot of them. Like For Your Eyes Only and Spy Who Loved Me and Tomorrow Never Dies. They're all kind of standalone things. Yeah. It's, the mythology, but they're standalone. This one, they reference Dr. No, and this is a revenge plot because of Dr. No. And the girl that he's sleeping, like he's with at the very beginning, is the girl that he was with at the very beginning of Dr. No. So it's very...
Well, that's something that's very different to the Connery era than anything other than the Daniel Craig movies. Is that everything in every movie in the Sean Connery movies, they're all heavily tied to the ones before them. Mm-hmm. Like, and I went ahead and watched the next, this one and the next two. These next movies that we're talking about shape Bond more than anything else, and they're hands down the most important ones. And the only thing that comes close is GoldenEye. But I you're right. I see it as you could have had a much more grounded series. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I agree if this is where James Bond shows up, but this is where, as I said, this is where he gets his suit at the very least. He doesn't quite... I don't know if he's quite Bond yet, but he is making his way there. I'd say it's probably the next one that we get is the first Bond movie.
Everyone has an opinion.
Yeah. And some of them are full of shit, and that's fine. So,
well, I'm looking at two of them. So,
He's gagging on the coffee grounds.
So, before we kind of dive into what we liked about it, Dad, what was like the A to B plot?
Okay, so as I told Lucas, and I sent both of you, I have a synopsis that I kind of ginned up that I thought I'd
up
read.
It's vodka and then we can gin come up.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Actually, it was ginned up. So I'll just go ahead and read it. So Spectre's number 1 orders Kronstein, who is number 5, to devise a plot. Number 5 to devise a plot to steal a Lecter cryptographic device from the Soviets and sell it back to them while extracting revenge on Bond for killing their agent, Dr. No. Ex-SMERSH operative Rosa Klebb, best name in the world, who is number 3, is in charge of the mission. She recruits Red Grant as an assassin and Tatiana Romanova, a cipher clerk at the Soviet consulate in Istanbul, as an unwitting bait. Bond travels to Turkey and meets Kerim Bey, the MI6 officer in Turkey. They obtain the Lecter, and Bond, Bey, and Romanova escape with the device on the Orient Express. They are followed by Grant, who kills Kerim Bey and a Soviet security officer. Grant pretends to be another British agent and meets Bond. Over dinner, Grant drugs Romanova, then overcomes Bond. Bond tricks Grant into opening Bond's attaché case in a manner that detonates a tear gas booby trap, allowing Bond to attack and kill him. Bond and Romanova escape with a Lecter to Venice. Rosa Klebb, disguised as a hotel maid, attempts to steal the Lecter and kill Bond, but ends up being shot by Romanova. That's the whole movie. So I guess we can stop now and
we're done.
Okay.
I'll go to bed.
Yep. All right. Good talk, guys.
Yeah. So for
Good talk.
me, what I liked about this right off the bat was that it was much more spy thrillery. I mean, we're talking about the Cold War now.
Yep.
So it was also it was a little bit more straightforward for me, where Dr. No, he's this nefarious uber villain that's in a volcano. I mean, I don't think he's actually in a volcano lair, but he's in a volcano lair.
This was
there's a bad organization. They're playing the Soviets and the British against each other. It's Cold War.
This is Cold War.
So
it's Cold War.
I know exactly why they're doing this. I know exactly why they want to do this. I know exactly what their plots are for. With Dr. No,
Yep.
Yeah, with Dr. No, it's kind of cuz.
Right. No, this is very. Everybody has a motivation. I understand that motivation. But even Romanov, she thinks that she's working for Russian intelligence. She's being played by Spectre. Like Spectre is this outside organization. I like that. I think that it grounded it more for me, which meant like it made the threat more real. When it's the
This entire movie was very real. It wasn't like, oh, this is a bad guy in a volcano lair, like you just said. This really could be happening. These guys could really be doing this. So should we talk about the beginning episode, the
cold open,
the cold open,
where James Bond dies.
Which I thought was amazing, that they think that they can take someone and put a James Bond mask on him and think that can train this assassin Red Grant by killing a guy with a James Bond mask on.
It's the same thing we had.
I didn't understand that.
It's the same thing we had before. We've talked about before. Where do these people get their? These people are obviously being paid. Why are they henching? What is their thing? So this guy signed up to just get murked by Robert Shaw.
Right.
It's like the contractors on the Death Star.
Yes. Yeah.
It's the same thing.
But one, to your point, Dad, I know why they did it. It was because you're meant as the audience to think, oh my God, there's James Bond, and this guy's killed James Bond.
And he's killed him. Exactly.
But then they Scooby-Doo him. Oh, absolutely.
And it was well done. Oh, yeah.
But it was a great opening sequence. I love that cold open. It doesn't have it had 3 blind mice for Dr. No. This one has From Russia with Love, but it's not played over the opening sequence. It's something it comes in.
And it's also not made for the movie, I don't think. Was From Russia with Love made for the movie? It was?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. But the first time we hear it's on the radio. It's like ambient. Yeah. It's not like what's that? What's the
right?
There's a word for that where it's like the soundtrack. Diegetic. That's it. So diegetic.
What's the word?
So it's not
diegesis. It's
music that's like in world. So like the characters can hear it too.
Okay.
It's on the radio or it's on the TV or whatever.
It's part of the.
It's not like just a soundtrack.
Yeah. Oh, so when he's with the woman in the
right
by the river,
which is
hear it on the radio.
Now I watched this on Pluto TV. They have all of them for free.
Really?
So So I can't be sure, because there's some commercial breaks, but it takes us 20 minutes almost, if not more, before we actually see the real James Bond. It takes a good chunk of time before we actually see Bond.
It took us.
Yeah, there's the whole training. There's the training sequence,
which
then
is
there's
so
the,
good.
The
training grounds.
I know. And then there's the title sequence with the women dancing and all the letters are going across, which was one of the first times they had done that, I think.
But they're training grounds. So Red Grant is this Irish assassin that's like, he's basically been brainwashed by Spectre, and Kleb has been hired by, tasked by Spectre. We're gonna go. Basically, we're gonna let British intelligence know that we have a Lecter, which they want. We're gonna use that as bait. They're gonna know that we're using it as bait, but they're gonna do it anyway because it's worth it. And we also know that they're gonna assign Bond to this, that's what we're really trying to do. At the same time, we're also trying to sow discord between the Soviets and British even more. The Cold War, their training grounds. It's they're walking through it, and there's a guy with a flamethrower. There's like people fighting in judo and all that kind of stuff, and you have to start thinking.
It's great.
It's are we the baddies? You start looking around like, why am I doing this? What is this for? What am I doing?
Hey, what is that? What does that guy have a flame?
No. I think what they're thinking is, am I making the grade? Because if I make a C on this test,
I have to put the James Bond mask on, and I get
kill me.
God damn it! I'm a James Bond dude.
I'm a James Bond. It's like the James Bond mask is the equivalent of the red shirt in Starfleet. That's
exactly.
It's like I just love that because we talked about how this is a lot more grounded and it is a lot more real, for lack of a better term, even though I kind of hate that term. And then there's just a bunch of dudes training like an open air training field because why not?
Yep.
I mean, there's a thing where it says, I agree, we use live targets. We should do that, and the whole brass knuckle thing. When she pops him in the stomach with that, I'm like, wow, that guy's tough.
So he has to kill Jaws, so
right. But that right there, that shows like he's a menacing threat. Like he's menacing, like where the plastic hand Dr. No was not. This guy could probably mess James Bond up.
I tell you what, they really did this role well. When they cast Robert Shaw to this, he was very good in this. He was very menacing. He was a very good.
And later on, he was Sheriff of Nottingham to Sean Connery's Robin in Robin and Marion.
Oh, that's right, he was.
There we go.
And we've come full circle.
Q is in it for the first time, and like even Q's gadgets.
Yep.
It makes sense.
They're pared down.
Yeah, there's a knife that's hidden in here, and there's this that's hidden in here. It's not a simple watch, and this will turn into blah, 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 blah.
And my favorite of all was the wristwatch with the garrote. I mean, that's just
and
that's
brutal.
classic.
Like again,
yes,
it's a kill. Like that's close quarter killing.
And then you realize the relationship with Miss Moneypenny. There's that flirting going on,
and that
further establishing the whole base that he's got.
He rides Pan Am again.
Oh yeah,
he rides Pan.
Oh yeah.
Which dates it to before 1991. What's really interesting to me, because there's something that you don't think about when you think about Bond movies, is that they're international, and every movie takes place somewhere different, and each place is different. Like he goes to Istanbul and he talks to Bay. And he says, "Yeah, we do the Cold War differently here. We make it easy for them to follow us in the daytime. They make it easy for us to follow in the daytime. It's just
game.
easy. Well, it's a game. It's so much. It's just so much.
It's actually not until the Daniel Craig movies that they've gone back to London, where there's things going on there. I mean, yeah, he was pretty much international.
And which I wanted to bring that up, but real quick, he lands and he goes to get in the car, and they have this little back and forth. And I kept thinking that I wonder if that's because in Dr. No, the guy just tried to pick him up. And like they implemented these protocols now that, hey,
Oh, you
lighter.
mean I use a
but
match,
the lighter goes
I
out.
use a lighter.
I wonder. It's
Exactly.
perfect, but I wonder if
Yeah.
hey, we need to have some code words for like when we pick up people. But you're absolutely right, Lucas, that these movies are so international. You know, I love the gypsy part where they go see like Bay brings him to this gypsy. It's very exotic, and
the Roma camp.
What I kept thinking is that this is probably the first time someone from Iowa had seen this world.
I just wrote it in my notes. I wrote it down. This whole thing was so exotic for 1960.
Yeah.
The whole gypsy thing. Women fighting.
The grappa that they're drinking. Like all the music.
And it was amazing. That whole segment was filler. It really had nothing to do with anything other than it brought you into that world that was different.
That section's cut out a lot on TV. When it's played on TV. That fight.
Well, how much then? Because of that, how much did James Bond do to expose mainstream? And you can read that as not well traveled people to these cosmopolitan places and customs. Like, how much did James Bond teach people about the world in some way? Like, you know, here's belly dancing,
or at least make them want
to learn about it. And then, who gets to research that kind of thing? Who says, okay, for this movie, we're going to go to Istanbul and here and here and here? Like, that's got to be such a fun job to like pick.
Oh, right.
How are we going to weave these locales into these stories?
And how many people in Iowa that were watching this thought, well, I'm never going to Istanbul.
Right.
There's a bunch of gypsies fighting.
We're not trying to knock Iowa, by the way. It's a central. I'm just thinking central, you know, middle heartland.
Something that would play in Peoria.
Right.
But I'm thinking that, you know, in 1960, that was really erotic and exotic.
Yeah.
To see these women fighting, and then they tie their skirts on around their waist, and they fight, and then at the end, it's, well, James, you get to decide who's the winner or loser, and there's this implied threesome going on where they fade out and fade back in,
right.
And yet you don't ever see anything.
No, they make a big deal of his scar. So I think the scar came from Dr. No. I can't remember if it did or not. They make a big deal out of it.
It's in the books.
But in the books, he's covered in them.
Right.
So that was just interesting that like he has this one, but in the books it's like he's a map almost.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny is thinking when you mentioned that, the only other character that I can think of, heroic character that's covered in scars, is Batman.
Yeah.
That's made as a plot point. Like in the comics, you ever see him shirtless, he's covered in, as you said, a map of things. Something that I forgot to bring up with Dr. No is that Sean Connery's perfect in this. Sean Connery is I don't know if he's the best Bond, because we're going to get there and we're going to talk more about this. But I know that. I don't know because again, they all do different things, and there's a lot of different reasons that we would go with them. He wasn't the first choice.
No.
And one of the earliest choices for Bond was actually an actor named Roger Moore.
But
he was already on the contract
for the Saint.
Yep.
Roger Moore would not have been able to pull this one off.
No.
In the same way, I don't think.
No. Because he's a completely different kind of character.
This was very close to the book as far as the cold, calculating. You know, if I need to slap somebody to get an answer, if I need to shoot somebody to get an answer, I'll do it. And he never even thought about it.
Never think about it. Never.
Nope. It's part of the job.
And we're gonna kill that. We're gonna kill that hitman. He attacked the Roma camp. We're gonna have to kill him now. So let's go to his hideout. I'm not as good of a shot as this guy. As
one of the great shots. Oh yeah.
And pardon me while my eardrums are destroyed.
Yeah. No, there was a silencer on the gun.
Yeah. So Romanoff is, again, she's the girl in this, and she's been basically, I think the ploy is that she wants to defect. That's what that Spectre has told her that Schmersh, the Soviets, are telling her. So Spectre's saying, hey, you're going to go tell Bond that you want to defect, or you're going to tell MI6 that you want to defect, and you only want to defect to James Bond because you've fallen in love with him. But you want to go defect directly to him, and if Bond helps you, he will get you'll get him a lector. So he finally meets her, and she's in bed, and she's all seductive and all that. And apparently, I read this that That scene where he meets the girl, that's the standard screen test scene for potential Bonds and Bond girls.
Yep.
They act that scene out.
Wow.
And that's the chemistry that they're looking for that.
Sure.
And they're filming it, and it's like a sex tape. So like, there's just like, again, it's a real world thing. They're going to blackmail the British intelligence.
That down. That was so creepy that you could see, all of a sudden you see the mirror behind the bed and you can hear the camera running.
Yep.
Because it wasn't a videotape, it was an actual camera.
So they're filming
That's
it for blackmail. You know, so again, that's another spy kind of thing.
It's interesting as sex charged as these movies are, for lack of a better term. They're all very chaste in the way they portray them.
Oh yeah.
And
it's implied, and this is like the only time there's ever actually any kind of nudity. Except it was implied.
But if you like, because I was kind of blown away by it, like she's only wearing the thing, the ribbon.
The black ribbon, right.
Yeah. But it's just really fascinating because the joke about James Bond is that he sleeps his way around the world, but you don't ever see that. There's the implication, and it's all relatively, as I said, chaste.
And that was the producers' going in position was they were never going to show, even as mores changed, in society, you've never seen a nudity in a James Bond movie.
Which I think that if you ever did, it would cheapen it. Like, it's one of the, your mind can fill in the blanks more erotically and more sexually and all that kind of stuff better than anything they'll ever show. Not to get too graphic because I'm talking to my brother and my dad, but Jesus. If I see James Bond's sex face, he's not cool anymore.
No.
Right? Like there's something like I don't need to. You don't need to see him in that because at that point he's vulnerable. I don't know. I don't need to see him doing that. He's no longer superhuman. Almost, right?
No, you just need to have it fade to black.
Yeah,
because you know what's happening. Yeah. You just don't need to see it happen.
Because the seduction.
But you already know because the next scene is going to be them ordering breakfast,
right?
Or the train going into the tunnel, or
right?
Or
exactly.
whatever.
Very subtle.
It's because the seduction and the build up in the game. That's the cool thing.
Yeah.
Exactly. You're
right.
You're absolutely
you nailed
right.
it.
Yep.
You nailed it.
Speaking of the seduction and the excitement, that's the thing. We all know da 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 da.
Yep.
Why doesn't everybody know dun 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 dun.
Everybody that's a James Bond fan does know that.
And
there's another one.
That hasn't translated to the newer movies though. That stopped.
Oh, that's right.
You don't hear that.
No, but it's the same way that
because there's this sweeping, after that little prelude, there's this da 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 da. There's this sweeping that goes over a bunch of different. You can use it a bunch of different ways. You're right. They're not in any of the Daniel Craig movies.
Or the Timothy Dalton or the. Or the Pierce Brosnan.
No.
We're
not beat over the head with that. The way we are,
that
to the music,
that theme drops off somehow at some point.
Can you hear me? Can you guys still hear me?
I can hear you. Yes.
Okay. Well, I just didn't know if you were, but no, it's because we're not beat over the head with it the same way that we're beat over the head with that first one, and that fight music doesn't show up in the first 30 seconds of every film. But every Bond movie starts out with ba-da-da-da. And that's his leitmotif. Every time there's a car chase or every time there's the James Bond moment, that plays. It's the same way how in we only started in the Avengers movies. The Avengers theme song didn't become a big thing until, honestly, Age of Ultron. There was an Avengers theme song, but they didn't beat us over the head with it every couple of times. Where it wasn't there isn't the same kind of cognitive repetition.
I don't think of it as beating us over the head.
Maybe that's the wrong term.
But to Lars's point, I'm surprised because that theme was always has always been in my head because I've watched these movies forever. But he's right. They're not in the newer ones.
It also doesn't sound as good, and it sounds a little bit like Captain Kirk fighting the Gorn.
Well, it's a plug fight music in kind of thing.
Yeah.
Oh, somebody's fighting, use this theme. Mm-hmm. It's not, but it's better music.
I'm not saying it's not better.
Yeah, John Barry is a better composer.
Yeah, you think?
What else did he do? Did he do the Rambo music? He did a couple other big, like, really...
Oh, he's always done you can't pick a movie that he hasn't done.
Right.
So I thought, like, getting back to, like, the gypsy fight, it was very risque for the time. It was very suspenseful. There was good music there. Once again, his suits are impeccable. Mm-hmm. I mean, every time I saw him in a suit, I was talking, Mary was watching part of them with me. I'm like, oh my God, I would die for one of those suits. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, to be able to fit into one of them, but oh my God, they were great. And then, during that whole fight scene, that's when Red Grant makes his first appearance. You don't know who shot who, but all of a sudden, here's the assassin, and you're trying to figure out, well, why is he protecting Bond?
He's toying with them, but also...
He's toying with them.
And they're trying to blackmail him. They're trying to... Because at that point, he hasn't met Romanov yet. Yeah, and that's right. They're really trying... It's not just revenge against Bond. It's we're going to escalate things with the Cold War, and at the same time, as an added bonus, we're going to screw Bond over and get revenge on him. And we have to guide him towards things. I gotta say, when I really liked his relationship with Bay. Is it Bay?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yep. Bay.
I like their banter. They were really and because Felix shows up all the time, mm-hmm. and to varying degrees of goodness.
Goodness.
Yeah. But I really liked Bay a lot. I thought that him having a partner almost.
Right.
And not just a partner, but he's has a significantly different outlook, and he's also a lot more. He's like his cool uncle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Plus, he's an expert in the area. He knows his way around.
He's his entrance into the world. He's kind of he explain
right.
And by explain
the guidebook.
He's the guidebook, and by explaining the world to James Bond, he is then explaining it to us.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But I really like them. So they do this, elaborate thing. They have a heist. They steal the Lecter machine, and they get on board the train to escape. And then you see Red Grant's on the train. And in the back of my head, I'm like, I've seen this before. I know what's coming. Oh, this is awesome.
Yep. But I want to back up for a second, because when they shoot the guy escaping out of the
mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Out of the mouth of the poster.
She should have kept her mouth shut.
This is the first time when you start hearing Bondisms.
Bond one-liners.
She should have kept her mouth shut. I started getting tired of them, even in this movie. I mean, if you can do one or two of them, but I think he did 5 or 6 of them where he'd say something like that. After something happened, he'd do almost like a
Groucho Marx joke.
It's just
Schwarzenegger and Predator.
If there's one thing if I could remove something from the James Bond movies, it would be those.
Yep. I mean, one of them's fine, but all of a sudden it turns into an Arnold Schwarzenegger. I'll be back.
Well, see, because I like the one she should have kept her mouth shut. Like that's
good.
Cold and calculating, and we just killed a guy, and we're not even sorry about it. In and out, we're done. You don't have to do anything more, and that's fine. But they turn this super spy into a joke to the point where we'll get to it. There's a Tarzan yell. Tarzan yells in our future. It's coming.
Yeah.
But
because I started writing them down, every one I'd hear, and I'm like, I got tired of them. So I liked when they were on the boat, the ferry or whatever, and he had the camera taking pictures of
broadcasting back to him,
and then it was a really cool tape recorder in the camera, and if you look really closely, it's an ever-ready battery you can see the battery in the camera. And I thought it was funny that when M and Miss Moneypenny and all the guys are there listening. Once it starts getting kind of risque, M makes Moneypenny leave.
And she gets back on.
And then she leaves, and then he turns the tape back on, and all the creepy guys are listening to it again.
Yeah.
So I just thought that was funny. Oh, and when the little details I saw, when you said when they blew up the consulate and they're going to steal the lector, and there's people running around, and Bond goes in and he keeps asking the guy, "Is your clock right?" And he goes, "It's a Russian clock. Of course it's right." If you look on the wall, there's a picture of Gregorian, the Russian cosmonaut that had probably just launched, and there's a picture of him on the wall. I'm like, wow, that's so cool that it's very time relevant.
Which you don't.
Like the same with the painting. The painting
exactly in Dr. No,
right?
Yeah.
Which I don't feel like the others are kind of informed by their, the dress and like the style of the clothes that they wear, but there's not a lot of those kind of things that I maybe I'll see it when we move on, but I don't get that frame of reference.
I think it has to do with the turnaround time on a film production now is so much longer, possibly, because No Time to Die got pushed back. It just got pushed back again, and that was supposed to come out January of this year.
Yeah, but it's already done.
Yeah, it's been done for a while, and it keeps getting pushed back.
So any of the references that it's going to make are going to be dated.
Possibly, yeah.
Right. But this one's dated in a good way.
Yeah.
It grounds you in, this is when this was made. This was made in the Cold War in
Which
the
is
60s.
not a yes. I feel like the term dated, it has a negative connotation. If it has
it's a period piece.
If it's a period piece, yes, this is a period piece. This is a merchant. You know what? Who needs the next one? Merchant Ivory should do the next James Bond movie. It's that would be something.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. But
I loved them boarding the train. It's the Orient Express. It's the train. It's murder on the Orient Express. I wish when they get on and you see the cars. I wish trains looked that way now. All the wood paneling, everything was just
and had their own names.
Opulent.
And had
yeah.
I rode the Thalys from Brussels to Paris, and we didn't have a dining car. They brought food to us, but that was the closest train experience that I've had, and it was glorious. It was really incredible. I'd love to go on a train like the Orient Express. That would be really cool.
And you can actually do it now. I know Mom and I traveled on the train quite a bit when we were in Denmark and other countries. It just was never the wood paneling in the car with that's just.
Well, I'm still
really
disappointed that we don't have any kind of high-speed rail like that stateside, but I'm also disappointed that we don't have that Zeppelins aren't a thing and they're not luxurious yachts of the sky. But
Yeah. Well, just wait, Lucas. It's coming.
Well, no, we're not in an alternate universe.
It's coming.
Right.
Yeah, we are.
Yeah, that's true.
Depends on the vote tonight.
So they get on the train, and as you mentioned in your synopsis, Dad, Grant kills Bay. And what I want to know is, so they kind of do the back and forth, and he kind of sort of certifies that he, yep, I'm an agent, I'm here to help you, all that kind of stuff. At what point does Bond know he's a bad guy?
Well, I back up just a sec, because I actually thought it was really cool that we saw them do the password early on, and then when he does the password, he goes and kills the guy and it replaces him. So then when he comes up to Bond, you see them doing it, and you know what he's doing, but the train noise is going on, and you can't hear them, but you know that they're doing the
lighter thing.
I need a match, I need a lighter, that whole thing. I thought that was really cool that they didn't have to beat you over the head with it, but you knew what they were doing.
You're saying, like, when does he know? It's the first time he says old boy, not old man.
Old man. I wrote down, you can tell that Nash irritates Bond immediately. He irritates him.
Yep.
And there's just something not right. It's just off. And then when he when he orders red wine with the fish.
Well, you're right.
He said, okay, something's not right.
But I feel like he orders red wine with the fish. They all get the grilled sole. He drugs the girl. They go back to their cabin, and Grant's got his gun on Bond. He's got the drop on him. Has Bond allowed him to get the drop on him, or I think that he actually got the drop on him. I think that he did.
It was the other way around. When they went into the cabin, he turned around and Bond had the gun on him initially, and he said, "What did you you put in her drink?" And he elaborated on the chemical or whatever it was, and then he said he explained it such that Bond put his gun away, which to me, that little moment, and when Robert Shaw, Red Grant, says, "Here, let me show you on the map what we're going to do," and Bond bends over, I was thinking, that whole sequence is idiotic. James Bond would never have done that. But I couldn't figure out why he was doing. He bent over to watch him, and
he
then
hit someone. That's right.
He got the drop on him.
And that was interesting.
He got the drop on him.
And that's actually what made I feel like the fight even better was that this guy got the drop on James Bond. James Bond is not infallible. James Bond can make a mistake.
And they do it that early on as well.
And that made it. And he's on his knees
with his hands in his pockets. And I'm thinking, wow, that's perfect. You can't do anything.
Yeah.
You're
and
stuck.
It's almost. I don't think that he even remembered the case until he. So going back, Q gives him the case, and there's a cyanide thing.
You could.
And you have to open a certain way, or else if there's
tear gas.
Or tear gas. You have to open a certain way so the tear gas doesn't go off. And I think he realized that in that moment. He's like, oh. This is how I'm going to get out. I have to play it cool, and you could see it.
You could actually see his head. The gears were spinning. Like, how the hell am I going to get out of this?
Case.
And then he says, "Can I have a cigarette?" And he goes, "No, I'll pay for it." And he goes, "Well, how are you going to pay for it?" There's 50 gold sovereigns in the case. Really? Yeah, let me get it. And you can see him open it, and he flips the little switches so where it won't go off, and he pulls the gold sovereigns out. And then I wrote down in my notes, Grant was greedy.
Yeah.
He was greedy. So he goes, "Is that standard with all these cases?" And James Bond says, "Well, yeah, I think so. Here, let me look." And he makes it to where he's greedy. I mean, he wants to do it. And Grant says, "Stop, I'll do it." And you can see him waiting because he's set him up, and he's finally, this is how I can get out.
Yeah.
And when that tear gas goes off, I can remember watching this in the theater. That was one of the greatest fights. It was real. It was vicious and treacherous, and it was just whatever I can do to kill each other, I'm going to do.
100%. This is one of the best. Yep.
And it was just
it's not stylish. It's not choreographed. And now, of course,
it was ugly.
Of course, it's choreographed. Of course, they planned all this out.
Yeah, but it's much dirtier looking than most fight scenes.
But it's not like.
And nothing was telegraphed. It was just this fight, and then all of a sudden you see him pull the thing out of the watch, the wire, and it gets around him, and he got his hand under it, and he's like fighting for the knife, and then he finally stabs him, and then flips it around. That was one of the best fights in a movie I've ever seen.
And I think the lighting helped with it because you couldn't see everything.
Yeah.
And and they also the lighting went out because they punched the lights out during the fight, and it wasn't. You're right. It was dirty. It was messy. Punches don't land. They don't grab. It's not like perfect. Like a lot of the fights later on, it's very like judo chop, very stylish. This
karate,
was they're two guys that are trying to kill each other.
Fighting
I'm trying
for
to,
their
and they're
lives.
pissed off, and they're sweaty and bloody, and I'm going to try to kill you. And I can't.
Part of what makes it look nice, what helps is that the film stock isn't that great. And it hides some of it, like it makes it look grittier and more real because you don't have this hyper clear 4K HD, and
there were a lot of cuts.
And they also
the tear gas went off. It was smoky. The light went out. It was dark. There was like a blue light. I think you could see.
Yeah, they break the light so that you could hide that it's not Sean Connery and Robert Shaw.
Well, of course it was. He's James Bond. What are you talking
no,
about?
but I agree. Like this
Come
fight,
on,
and I think that fight lends. It's towards the end, but I feel like once you see it, when you watch the rest of the movie, it colors the rest of the movie that this is a very dangerous, gritty movie because of that fight. And obviously, James Bond, and I love it. He kills him, and he stands up, and he's got blood on his hands and blood on him. Fixes his tie.
Yep.
Oh yeah, of course he does. It was. I'm sure there are better fight scenes in movies, but at this time, in this movie, it was one of the greatest.
Well, and it's just like it's a great fight scene because it's actually, if you're in that situation, you're trying to kill the other person. It looked like two people trying to kill each other. It didn't look like two people fighting.
Yep.
It looked like I'm trying to kill you, and
so
you don't kill me. I haven't actually seen a lot of fights like that. You see fights where I'm trying to punch you.
Sure.
This one, I'm not trying to punch you. I'm trying to strangle you to death.
Yeah.
With a wire.
And if I need, I'll bite your nose off.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I loved it that, when they get away from the train stops and they get away, and she's still loopy, and he gets into the truck, the truck that was supposed to pick him up. And I'm thinking to myself, I've never seen James Bond drive a pickup truck. And yet there he goes. Yeah. He's driving a pickup truck down the highway. And where were they? In
Trieste.
Kiev or Trieste. That's right. They were outside of Trieste.
Something that so the boat chase has been seared in my mind for most of my life, and I figured out why is because early Bond movies, specifically like the Connery stuff, every chase sequence is sped up. It's artificially sped up, and they're the boat sequence in general has this.
You mean like in Thunderball, that whole boat sequence at the end was very sped up.
Yeah. At the end of this one, in particular, it feels like it's careening out of control almost, and they all do that. This isn't as bad at.
I thought the funny part was before they got to the boat, they're driving the truck and the helicopter's buzzing them, dropping hand grenades on them. I'm like, oh my God, look at how many things have happened to them. They were on a train, they're in a pickup truck with a helicopter, they're on a
worst road trip ever.
Ever.
Well, and I remember the boat chase at the end, because he shoots a flare and it ignites. And I remember the first time I saw this, I rented the VHS from the library in New Orleans.
I thought we had this on DVD. I thought we had this on the VHS. Because I remember that cover of him with the flare gun.
That's what I picked it up from that. And it was from Watching with Love.
Oh, from the Jefferson
Parish Library.
Jefferson Parish
and I remember
Library.
I got it. And he's got his little Greek captain hat on, and he's shooting the flare gun. And I remembered that. So when I haven't seen this one in a little while. So when I was watching, I'm like, he was shooting a flare gun. This is the part. Okay. Now I remember. Okay.
Oh yeah. Because it's funny because he's got all these fuel tanks and they shoot through them. And as soon as they shoot through them, I'm like, okay, well, this is going to play a vital role in the movie.
They should have just been red.
Of course, it rolls off. And it kills me that the Spectre boats are chasing them. And there's a yellow flag and a red flag and a black flag on them. And they're talking to each other like, don't shoot them to kill, just shoot to... It's like a training exercise almost where they're riding around trying to herd them into whatever. But
so they make it out of everything, and there's that last little. It's when Michael Myers sits up in the back, for that one last scare. There's that one Rosa Clip. There's that one last little bit, and she's got a shoe knife. Oh,
which is at the very beginning of the movie. There was a shoe knife,
and because we neglected. It starts with a chess match.
Yep.
There's a chess match, exactly, which I thought was really interesting that there's a chess match at the very beginning, and he gets a call. He gets a note saying, we need you.
Number 5, we need you now.
Immediately.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And he's a chess master, so you watch him win the chess match. But, yeah, when does the guy have the... Oh, I know. So there's right after the grenade drops into the helicopter and explodes, and then you see number 1, number 3, and number 5 are together, and it's, number 1 is petting the white cat with the ring on his hand. He's the Spectre guy, and the tall guy comes in with he says, it's implied that Rosa has done something wrong and she's going to be killed, but it's the Kronstein that, remember, he kicks him with a knife and kills him, and then sends Rosa on her way to go do her stuff.
And so she has like a poison shoe knife, and she's trying to kick at James Bond. And I love that because this whole time Romanov, she thought she was with the Soviets, but she realizes that she's with Spectre. She's fallen in love with James. They're gonna go be an English couple at Piccadilly or whatever, and Kleb disguises herself as a maid to get at James Bond, and it's Romanov that's like, "Hey, I recognize you." Yep.
And she goes,
and she ends up, she shoots her, right? Mm-hmm. She saves the day.
Yeah, and so James Bond's got her pinned to the wall with a chair, and he can't. All of a sudden, he falls back, and she's going to get him, and then she shoots her and kills her.
This is one of the first ones. Well, I mean, this was the first one. James Bond will return in Goldfinger.
Yep. Yes.
Ballsy.
Ballsy. Exactly. And you can see him because he's got the film they took of them in the hotel, and they're in Venice in the canal, and he throws the thing in the water, and then it says James Bond will return
in Goldfinger. So they
in Goldfinger,
and that was that was interesting. That's like, we've got confidence that this is going to be something. This is going to be something, and we know the next one. And I forget when they stopped doing that. I think they stopped doing it after Roger Moore, because I don't remember seeing at the end of GoldenEye.
No.
With he'll be returning tomorrow.
Really?
Never dies. Maybe he does. Like I'll be on the lookout for that too. But that was something I remember, that because that's another trope that that has been spoofed in a lot of other things. It was in Austin Powers. It was in, I think, in the.
It starts showing up in the Marvel movies where they say Iron Man will return.
It was in the Arrested Development spoof like episodes. Like there's certain episodes where they spoof the James Bond movies, and I think that like Mr. F, and I think like Mr. F will return in, like they actually did something like that where I don't know, it was just another thing that you see a lot of, that they've planned, they've started. I'm planning he's going to come back in this movie. This is the next one that we're doing.
But can you imagine being the producers and everybody that financed this movie? Before they released it, they sit everybody down in a theater and you watch the movie. And at the end of it, everybody's going to go, "Oh yeah, we got something here. We've got something here. You're however much money you need. Yep, you got the next one. We're good." Now, and at the very end, when she kills Rosa, I wrote down, once again, his last line was, "She had her kicks." Mm-hmm. And I'm like, oh my God, please, not another.
Right.
Not another one.
This was a perfect sequel. It took all the elements that worked in Dr. No, made them better, branched it out,
fixed a lot of the problems,
like fleshed things out, fixed a lot of the problems, and it was just, it's a solid performance by Sean Connery, like just so good.
It's not gadget heavy. It's Cold War. It's real.
The Bond girl kills somebody. She's not just this helpless damsel. Like she does stuff.
Yeah.
She saves him.
She
does things. She has agency. She actually does things in this. Like her seducing James Bond, that's part of her spy job, right? So it's interesting. A lot of them later ones, the James Bond girl
is set dressing.
Just plug in. It's just set dressing. No, she's integral to the plot of this, which was refreshing.
Yeah, what was her name in the one that was a nuclear physicist?
Yeah,
Jones?
Christmas something.
Christmas. It looks like Christmas came twice this year.
Who was it? What was her name?
Denise Richards.
What's her real name? Yeah, I mean she was perfect in that role.
What's going to be great is
So they go downhill.
What's going to be great is we're going to get there.
Folks,
I'm
they go
like,
downhill.
really?
They go
We're
downhill.
going to get there, and it's like, oh, she's pretty good, you know. They're all
whatever.
They're all over the place in general, both films and like as films, as characters, as pieces in general. So I mean, there's swings and misses.
This is a big
hit.
This one really got all the pieces right.
I don't know if this is my favorite, but it's like number 1 or 2.
This is my
right
favorite. This is my number 1.
I gotta go with
it. Just nails
this
it.
is incredible.
It nails
I
everything.
gotta say my favorite's probably still the next one.
You would not be incorrect with saying that. So my first Father's Day was like 2 weeks after Elliot was born.
Mm-hmm.
So, or not even that, maybe it was like a week. What I wanted to do for Father's Day was I wanted to watch a James Bond movie, and then we went to a vineyard, and this was the James Bond movie we watched.
Okay.
Like I held him in my arms, and we watched.
So did Elliot like
He had
it?
a lot. His commentary was a little bit, unrefined.
Ooh, look.
We haven't gotten there yet.
Ooh, Rosa.
Yeah,
Rosa
there
Klebb.
But no, this is a great one.
I mean, I just think this one really defines James Bond.
Yeah. From here, yeah, it really does. More so than Dr. No. This is this is the foundation on which everything else is then built.
There was a quote I read about this.
Yep.
Where everyone trying to make a James Bond movie tries to make From Russia with Love, and more often than not they make Thunderball. Yeah,
that's pretty good.
That's good because
really like Thunderball.
I mean, in all like Thunderball is a good movie. It's a good movie, and it's just not. This one is it grittier? Is it realer?
I think grittier.
I
think that the jokes are not. It's not camp.
Right,
it's not played up for the camp.
It's not camp.
It's more.
Yep.
I don't know. The fact that he is. It's when you're reading a James Bond or when you're reading a Batman comic. Some of the best Batman comics are the ones where he's just fighting criminals.
Criminal, right?
Like Lucas Hush. He's a supervillain, but he's a criminal.
He doesn't have powers,
right? Like he's not like trying to like end the world. He doesn't have powers. Yep. He's just a criminal. So I like that, and I feel like that's why this one works. Is that it's more. And I agree with you, Lucas, that I hate that. Well, it's just really real, so obviously that's what's better. No, these are escapist movies. It's okay if you go beyond that.
Sure.
But the fact that the villain is menacing and a threat, and that he could, I believe that Red Grant could kill James Bond very easily. That's what
without the use of laser beams or diamonds
or a
space,
set of metal teeth.
Or set of metal teeth.
I believe that he could kill James Bond. That makes it better because now I'm worried that James Bond's not going to make it out of it.
And James Bond thought, I'm done for. I'm here on my knees with my hands in my pockets. How the hell do I get out of this?
So,
and he figured it out.
So even when you get to Goldfinger with Odd Job, that's the first time where it's like, oh, well, he's throwing a metal hat.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yes.
But it's a different direction than this one. So.
Yes, it was.
Well, this was really fun, guys. I'm enjoying this.
Yeah, it really was.
Dad, I got to tell you, the other thing that Lucas and I are doing more often than not leads us to watching horrible movies.
And then we get to watch
god-awful movies. So far,
have any
they
of them
haven't really been that bad.
Have you actually watched? Have you actually watched Zardoz in any of these? So you need to do that. Oh, because my God, what was he thinking?
Look, cocaine. Cocaine's a hell of a drug.
John Borman made 3 movies, one of them great, one of them incredible, and then he made Zardoz.
No, actually, I mean, when you watch it, it's like, this is just bizarre.
There's something here. I don't know what it is, but there's something
to
here.
it. Yeah. But then just to watch Sean Connery, like, wow.
We have seen we've actually in our other project we've seen him in Time Bandits. We've seen him in Highlander.
Oh,
I think that's it.
Both great.
Well, Highlander and Dragonheart. Highlanders are number 1.
No, and Dragonheart.
And Time Bandits, I thought he played that straight, and he played it very well. I mean, it was just his role was, who was he, Agamemnon?
Well, and that's what's impressive about him is that, of course, when you think Sean Connery, you think James Bond, of course. But I feel like he was able to move beyond it in a way that he was a really good actor. He's a really good actor, so he
played the same character for the most part, but he was able to make that character work in almost every role he was in.
If you guys have not seen The Man Who Would Be King, you need to watch that movie. He is so good in that movie with I can't think of his name, but oh my God, that's such a good movie. And it was such a good role for him. He should have won an Oscar. I saw
The Lion and the Rose, and I really liked that one. I think it's The Lion and the Rose. I think that's what.
The Lion and the Rose. Oh no, in Medieval where he was the monk.
No,
because that was a good one as well. It was something about the rose.
The Wind and the Lion.
It
was John Milius. It's like in Morocco. It's like like turn of the century Morocco. And it's like Theodore Rose. It's a World War I movie.
What's really interesting is Last Crusade.
We didn't even talk about Last Crusade.
He's so good in Last Crusade.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Last
He's
Crusade
perfect.
is the only time he doesn't play.
He's perfect.
Something that was influenced by James Bond. He plays kind of like he's kind of he's a fop and a dandy, and he's a non-action guy.
He's a dad. Yeah. He's a professor. That's a dad.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and like his later roles tend to be, we're gonna do everything to make you James Bond without making you James Bond, like Entrapment and The Rock and League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Those are all more or less James Bond,
except
I
for
would have to disagree.
Untouchables.
Yeah.
Now. But I bring this up just and again he just passed away, and I think one of the things that set him apart from other James Bonds, each of them bring something different to the table. Each of them have had shining moments in the role, but I can't think of anything else Roger Moore did aside from The Saint. Like I mean, you'd have to really think about it, and I don't think
The Quest with Jean-Claude Van Damme.
See, that's the thing. I don't think he was a good actor, and I don't think that. Timothy Dalton's fine, and he actually is really good in Doom Patrol, but I feel like they started off with, let's find someone that's not just that looks good and like can be like they found a good actor that could really embody the role, and I feel like he's the reason why the movies have now gone on and had such staying power, is that he was able to create this character, and it captured people's imagination. And it kind of laid the groundwork for, well, I just want to see more James Bond movies, and everything is now compared to him. And it's not just because he was the first; it was just because he did such a good job at it.
And it's really interesting because he was in less movies than Roger Moore was, and Roger Moore may have. It's weird that Sean Connery was in more. I believe that Roger Moore had like 7 or 8 Bond movies, and Sean Connery was only in like 6.
Yeah, but Roger Moore was in...
Excluding...
He was like almost 60 in the last one. And he said he should have never done the last one because he was having a hard time even moving around. He was so old.
Yeah.
The Name of the Rose is the movie where he was a monk. He was a detective sort of in medieval times, and there was some kind of... Christian Slater was in it. He was his servant or something. It was a really good movie. He's been in a lot of really different movies.
Well, Lucas, where can folks find us?
We can be found on the internet and Twitter at SwordInBoardCast, on Podbean at swordandboard.podbean.com, on Stitcher and Apple Podcasts and Google
Skywriting
Podcasts.
and smoke signals.
Oh, look. I see it from here.
Yeah.
The telex.
And the telex.
And you can...
And the lector.
And fax.
And find your lector machine, and you should be able to decode this podcast.
Our theme song is produced by Ryan Boyd. You can find them at Rye Android, which I have realized after the most recent episode that I have been saying their Twitter handle incorrectly this entire time. Give them a listen. We will be back with our next Bond film in a little while, Goldfinger.
James Board will return
in
Goldfinger.
Nice.
Very good.
Yes. All right. Have a good night.